As you know, as on date, UNMISS, as we call the United Nations mission in South Sudan, is the largest mission, the largest UN mission in the world. And our force is about 13,300 strong as of now. And it is deployed in all over South Sudan, a country which is, if I have to use an analogy, it is twice the size of Germany, 6 times the size of Bangladesh, 6 times the size of Nepal. What I want to say is it's a big country with very underdeveloped infrastructure. This is the youngest nation in the world, born in 2011. And the infrastructure is yet to develop. And many places are very remote and difficult to reach. And 2018, there was the ceasefire agreement. Luckily, and with the efforts of all stakeholders, that ceasefire has held. National level violence is not taken place after 2018. However, there is a fair amount of ethnic violence, or what we call as the subnational violence, that takes place in a number of states. At any time, you will have 3 to 4 such clashes or conflicts taking place in the country. That is our biggest worry. The primacy for dealing with these clashes and ensuring protection of civilians is that of the government of South Sudan. We try to be as responsive and as helpful as possible in order to supplement the efforts of the government. And in some places where the government is not present and we are present, we try to take the lead and help in the situation. Protection of civilians, as you know, is a combination of many activities. We call them tiers. The tier 1 is largely engagement, wherein we all of us who are stakeholders engage with the political leaders, the military leaders, the traditional leaders, the religious leaders, and community leaders, and try to find a solution to the problem before the conflict erupts. There is also the second tier, which is physical protection. We resort to physical protection in multiple ways. Talking as the force commander, I can tell you, we are present in 27 bases in this country. And in these 27 bases have been selected based on their susceptibility to violence, recurrent violence. So we try to be permanently deployed in locations where there is the possibility of recurrent violence. And from there, we operate to other areas where there is sporadic or emergent violence. So this is our basing strategy largely. And then we cover the rest of the country where we are not deployed by a robust patrolling, through long duration patrolling, through establishment of temporary operating bases, through carrying out short duration patrols and riverine patrols and air patrols. So a number of these types of patrols. The basic method we follow in South Sudan is something that we call as the hub and spoke model, wherein we go with a large strength of 80 to 100 peacekeepers, uniform peacekeepers. We deploy in a place which we are referring as the hub. And we stay there, and from there we radiate a large number of patrols on various directions, radial patrols, which are called the spokes. So through this hub and spoke method, we try to dominate the area which is affected by violence or which is likely to be affected by violence. The key to our performance in protection of civilians is how well we discern the trend or the possibility of violence early enough. In other words, early warning. So a lot of our effort goes towards generating early warning to discern the possibility of a conflict beforehand. Most of our efforts are in the prevention area. Our aim is to prevent. But then there is one problem in the prevention area. When we have prevented a conflict or we have saved lives, nobody comes to know. It is only when we fail in prevention and conflicts take place and people die, you come to know that something has happened. So this is a constant problem of motivation of peacekeepers to tell them that, look, your efforts are saving lives. Your efforts are preventing conflicts. But they may not be tangible. We try our best to get indications and keep ourselves motivated. But that's a different issue. We are not bothered about proving that we are doing a good job. As long as we are able to ensure peace, I think the impact will be seen by the community we seek to serve. And the other point I want to tell you before I get on to the Rwandan contribution here is the fact that protection of civilians, I think it is the Rwandan president who made the statement in 2016 beautifully. he said, I may not be exactly repeating his words, but he said something like this, which you can check. That has remained with me after I heard it the first time. He says, you can say anything in the mandates, but the central purpose of all peacekeeping mission remains protection of civilians. And that's our Bible. That's our mantra here. Protection of civilians is what we are here for, mainly. We have other sub-mandates, equally important, but protection of civilians is the focus. Now, protection of civilians is not only protection of civilians from physical violence. It is also protection of civilians from conflict-related sexual violence. This is a big menace in this country. A huge percentage of women in this country have suffered CRSV, the conflict-related sexual violence, and they have suffered it repeatedly. So that's our main focus. It is also protection of civilians from death and injury due to natural calamities like floods. You are visiting us at a time when the country is experiencing one of the worst floods it has seen. Nearly 1 million people are already displaced. So, you will appreciate that we can't be bystanders when communities suffer these floods. So it becomes part of our protection of civilians' responsibility. While large-scale flood mitigation and flood relief is taken on by the developmental and the humanitarian partners, whatever we can do in our areas of deployment to alleviate the sufferings of people, that becomes our responsibility. So that's the protection of civilians ambit. Now, how do we carry it out? Whenever a conflict, first of all, you have to understand that protection of civilians is a whole of mission effort. It is not done by the military alone. It is not done by the civilians alone. We all do it together and concurrently. All our actions happen concurrently. Suppose there is a conflict that is about to break out in a certain area. Our first effort is to find out who are the interlocutors, who are the leaders whom we can engage to prevent the conflict. So that is done largely by our civilian component, the political affairs and the civil affairs, and a number of other people. We also do this sort of, in the force, we do such engagement with the military leadership, both at the national and the subnational level. Aim is to prevent the conflict. As I said, that is the focus. Failing which, suppose we realize that it may not be working, then concurrently we move our force in a way in which we show our presence in areas of conflict. Now, fortunately in South Sudan, we are currently not direct targets of any armed faction. That is because of good political management of the situation by the mission and the host government support. We are able to maintain a system wherein we aren't under direct threat. So our presence very often, if we have reached a place where there is a conflict likelihood, if we have reached there, we have normally prevented it. That is the advantage we have in South Sudan. I hope it stays that way, touch wood. That if we can show our presence, the conflict is averted. So our aim is to rush and show our presence in the areas of conflicts when we have early warning. So we do it by going and occupying a base temporarily, or if we already have a base in that area, we reinforce the base and take out patrols from that. Or we take out just a patrol and go and interpose between the attacking elements and the village that is being attacked. Or we take the decision to escort the civilians who are moving out of the area to safety, or we establish a location where we can receive displaced people. Now, these are all number of options, but which option we choose is always dependent upon which is the option that affords the possibility of maximum number of civilian lives being saved. Sometimes blindly rushing and attacking an armed faction does not save civilian lives. To me, a civilian is somebody who is not armed, who has not taken a weapon in the hand, somebody who is not party to the conflict, somebody who is an innocent, hapless victim of conflict. So our aim is to protect them. So blindly rushing on to protect, to attack an armed faction sometimes can be foolhardy. So we take a decision depending on the situation. The guiding factor is, as I told you, how many civilians we are able to protect by that effort. Whichever option gives us the maximum opportunity in this regard, we adopt that. So this is our protection of civilians tactics, and in a broad. It's difficult to compress it into just this much, but this is largely the ambit. Now let me talk about the Rwandan contingent. Now it's the backbone of UNMISS. The largest contribution of troops and police personnel to UNMISS is by Rwanda. We have got 3 infantry battalions. 2 of them are in Juba, and 1 of them is in Malakal in Upper Nile State. We have got an aviation unit, and of course we have got 2 police units. In addition, we've got senior officers from Rwanda who are helping me run the force. The sector commander in Sector Unity, which is headquartered at Bentiu, is from Rwanda traditionally. Of course, that is not fixed, but one of the sector commanders would generally always be from Rwanda because it's a large contributor. I also have senior military observers, and we've got the Deputy Chief of Operations, Deputy Chief of Staff Operations in our force headquarters, who is the pivot of all operational planning and execution in our mission. He is from Rwanda, as you can see, and there are a number of officers who are working as staff officers and military observers. So it's a very large presence. In fact, a commanding presence. The Rwandan contingent constitutes the backbone of our mission. Now, having said that, they are also deployed in very critical areas. Now, one of the infantry battalions, I'll start from the north, is in Upper Nile State. And in that state, even as we speak today, in the area of operations of the Rwandan battalion there are clashes going on right now. So it is a very volatile area. And they are also responsible for protection of the only protection of civilians camp that we run as UNMISS, where about 40,000 to 42,000 displaced personnel are housed, protected, fed, and taken care of by us till the time they are in a position to return to their villages. That is largely taken care of by the Rwandan battalion in conjunction with the Indian battalion. And there is also a police unit there, which is complementing the efforts of the battalion, as well as doing independent work in the POC camp. The second Rwandan battalion is located in Durupi, which is a camp that is just 5 kilometers from where we are sitting. They are the ones responsible for the Juba city security, as well as the Lenya County from our perspective, from the UNMISS perspective. Of course, the security is the primary responsibility of the host government, but I'm saying from our side, carrying out our mandate in that area is done by the Rwandan battalion, which is a battalion which came to us after we had this clashes and had a huge civil war situation in 2016. That battalion came to us as part of Rapid Protection Force. Now, of course, the Rapid Protection Force concept is gone. Now they are like any other battalion, but then their job essentially remains the same, although the name has changed. We also have another battalion which is located in Juba in our camp called Tomping, but it is responsible for the Eastern Equatorian state. So they operate from here, and they've got a presence in a place called Torit, which is the capital of Eastern Equatoria, and they dominate that huge state, which is a critical state again. So all the 3 battalions are deployed in critical areas. The Rwandan Aviation Unit is the only military aviation unit with us, and is again a backbone. It has done some splendid deployment in the past in operations. Now, I think we have an overall strength of 2,990 or 95, somewhere thereabout. That's the strength we have, which is the largest contingent strength from any country, contingent in the country. So, and there is also another intangible role played by the Rwandan contingent, which I would like to highlight. You see, the fact that having been a host country for a UN mission after the genocide or during the genocide, to one of the foremost contributors of peacekeepers to conflict zones in the world, I think it's a tremendous transition by Rwanda. And that itself, by the Rwandan troops operating here, that itself serves as a role model for the host government and its forces. It shows them the possibility, and therefore there is something that is intangible, and that's again a service provided by our Rwandan colleagues here. Now, this is in a nutshell about the Rwandan contribution. Staff officers and senior leadership from Rwanda, they also contribute heavily. Your sector commander is deployed in Sector Unity, which is the most flood-affected state of this country, and this country, and it also has. It's also one of the conflict hotspots, so that's also a very critical area. And of course, my right hand, the Deputy Chief of Operations, Deputy Chief of Staff Operations, is also an important cog in the UNMISS and also an important part of the Rwandan contingent. So you see other officers here, you see the protocol officer, so many, in every field, the training or chief of training, a lot of functions are performed by Rwandans. We have also got a senior military officer of the rank of colonel from Rwanda. He's in northern Bahr el Ghazal right now. So all over the country, Rwandan presence is there. So they contribute a lot. This is what we call as civil-military cooperation activities, in short, CIMIC. This is done by all the Rwandan battalions in their respective areas. They do such activities as per the needs of the community in their area. The Rwandan Battalion 2 you mentioned is near the POC camp, where they're training the young women there on martial arts, because that was a felt need of the community. Plus, there's so much of such activities the battalions undertake from time to time. Sometimes conduct of medical camps, sometimes conduct of sports and games, sometimes training people on essential skills, sometimes repairing a small road, building a small dike, which is basically to support the community in the midst of which they are deployed. Basically to tell them that we are with them and with their hearts and minds, and to tell the community that we are here to serve. From that, and this is completely funded by the Rwandan government. This is not United Nations funded. This sort of what you call the CIMIC activities done by Rwandan battalion. All battalions do it, but the Rwandan battalions do it very well, and that really helps. It endears us to the communities we serve. You are aware that UNMISS as a general mission in neutral perception surveys, we enjoy popular support. That's a very unique feature of UNMISS, because normally UN missions currently are not perhaps enjoying as much popular support as they should. But luckily for us, we have majority of population in this country feeling that we are doing a good job, and majority population likes our presence and thinks that our activities are making a difference to their lives. So that's the benefit we have. The community perceives us as useful, and in that regard, the CIMIC actions done by battalions also come into play. So from that point of view, I value these activities hell of a lot. Only thing is, although it is funded and totally conceived and conducted by the Rwandan contingent, we do coordinate it at the force headquarters, so that we don't do any harm. The policy is do no harm. What we do in one location to one community should not inadvertently cause harm to somebody else. We should be seen as balanced and neutral and addressing the needs of all communities and not biased towards one. So we do coordinate the activities so that it is useful and productive, and I can only say thanks to the Rwandan government and contingent for carrying out such work. So as you said, our mission has representation, if I'm not wrong, from 110 countries. Our force may have about 74 or 75 in the last count. So it's a very, very diverse combination. Each contingent brings with itself its own uniqueness. Now, Rwandan contingent being our biggest contingent, its uniqueness almost defines us. Now, what is unique about Rwandan contingent is in a very short time of organization from 1994, Rwandan Army has very solid doctrines and very well-made standard operating procedures. Officers and troops are very well trained. They are robust, ready to take on any activity. And they understand UN missions very well, being such a major contributor in many missions. They understand UN missions so well. So they are a very robust component of the force. In a sense, their uniqueness comes from the fact that there is a passion in Rwandan peacekeepers, in the sense that what Rwanda has suffered in 1994 needs no emphasis. In fact, I think, I may be wrong, but I think you are the only country which has a constitutional mandate for international peacekeeping. You see, so from there it stems the authority and the relevance of peacekeeping for Rwandan army. It's a constitutionally mandated task that the armed forces have. So therefore, that gives a certain sense of purpose. And Rwanda, as I said, the uniqueness is also in the fact that Rwandan armed forces, wherever they operate in peacekeeping contingents, are setting a role model to the host government. In them, host governments can have a hope that this is what our armed forces can also do once we settle ourselves and get into peaceful mode for development. So robustness, well-trained army, armed forces, supported by comprehensive doctrines and standard operating procedures, and of course the uniqueness of your situation in that you have come up from that situation in 1994 to being a foremost contributor to United Nations peacekeeping now. All this lends this uniqueness to Rwandan contingent.